Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Native American Agriculture Fund's second Request for Applications webinar. We'd like to take just a few more minutes to make sure that all who have intended to join us today have time to log in. So if you would, please bear with us and we'll be back shortly. Thank you. All right, thank you. We did have some more people to join. Again, this is the second of 3 webinars for the Native American Agriculture Fund's 2019 Request for Applications. Before we dive into the content, a few headliners. 1, if you have any technical difficulties, you can reach us at 479-445-6226, and our staff will try to help you rejoin the webinar. As I said, this is the second of 3 webinars, so our third and final will be Tuesday, September 3rd. We already have the recording from the first webinar available on the website. So if at any time you're disconnected, please do reach out to 479-445-6226 to be connected again. But if that doesn't work, don't worry. We have all of this information in several venues. At any time, if you have a question, please use the rectangular GoToWebinar control panel to submit a question. We will see that, we will log it, and at the end with Q&A, we will address that on air. You're also welcome to submit your questions through grants@nativeamericanagriculturefund.org or to call the phone number I gave previously with your grant question. We want to make sure that we have open lines of communication and that you are heard and we get a response back to you. With that, I'd like to introduce Tony Stanger McLaughlin, a regional director for the Native American Agriculture Fund. She will walk us through the request for applications PowerPoint that you should see on your screen now. Again, if you have any questions, please use that GoToWebinar control panel to communicate with us. Thank you.
Tilhas Disquinshootin Sutitqua. Hello, my name is Water Runs Downhill. My English name is Tony Stanger. I am a member of the Colville Confederated Tribes, and I am a regional director for the Native American Agriculture Fund. Welcome everyone to our second webinar, where we will once again go over the slides that were presented in our first webinar and address some of the questions that have come to our email and phone box. We're going to move on to our next slide. During this presentation, you can submit questions via the question box. If depending on how you're logged on, either via phone or computer, that question box will be in a different location, but you can look for a chat box or a question box, or you can submit questions live. Otherwise, you can send them to our email or our phone call, and we will address those as quickly as possible. And if the question cannot be answered today, we update and continually update our Q&A, which is located on our website. Next slide. An overview of where we were created and where we are now. So the Native American Agriculture Fund, or NAAF, was created out of the Cypre funds, or the Cypre settlement within the Keepsigal litigation. For a history of that litigation and final settlement, you can locate that on our website at nativeamericanagriculturefund.org/history. NAAF is made up of the leadership of NAAF is through trustees, and the trustee agreement was executed on July of 2018. The trust agreement governs all of our operations, and it sets the stage for our grant making functions. The trust agreement can be located at nativeamericanagriculturefund.org/trust-agreement. Next slide. For some more history on the Keepsigal settlement, the Keepsigal v. Vilsack case was originally filed in the 1980s, and it became a class in the 1990s and early 2000s, and entered into a settlement agreement with the Department of Agriculture. The case was for Native American farmers and ranchers that were filing discrimination complaints against USDA and the Farm Loan Program. The final settlement agreement was for $680 million and an additional $80 million in debt relief. There was also tax relief and various equitable relief to farm loan programs and policies. The programmatic relief, as an example of some of that, was the creation of Council of Native American Farmers and Ranchers that served for a period and addressed issues to the Secretary. Following the completion of the claims process and payment of all the successful claims, approximately $380 million remained, and that was because when the class representing the claimants and the Department of Agriculture in negotiations of how many potential claimants would exist at the time of the settlement, it was unknown, and it was no one's fault, and the class council shot for a large number, and they were successful in getting that number and thus the amount, and as a result they had a leftover amount, and this leftover amount then had further negotiations, and finally everyone came to an agreement, and after a second payment was made to each prevailing claimant, and $38 million went to Native American, what in the fast track distribution went to Native American organizations that benefit our work on behalf of Native American farmers and ranchers. That left $266 million, and those funds helped create and establish the Native American Agriculture Fund. And the Native American Agriculture Fund will exist for a period of 20 years, and it expires in September of 2038. Next slide. For a look at some of these documents and further background, you can visit our website. And to find the specific documents related to this grant and this request for funding, you can view our grants page at nativeamericanagriculturefund.org/grants. NAAF welcomes ongoing input from farmers and ranchers to help guide us, and so we are requesting individuals complete a survey, and that can be located on our website as well, or you can go to www.surveymonkey.com/R/8YZTQ3. Next slide. The mission of the Native American Agriculture Fund shall be to make grants to eligible grant recipients described in Section 8, to fund the provisions of business assistance, agricultural education, technical support, and advocacy services to Native American farmers and ranchers to support and promote their continued engagement in agriculture. Next slide. Again, as I discussed, our leadership is within our trustees, and our trustees we have 14 trustees, and they comprise various parts of the country and various tribes. Our chair is Elsie Meeks, and our vice chair is Richard Williams. And our organization is led by Janie Hemp, and our CFO is Vince Logan. Janie is from the Chickasaw Nation, and Vince is from the Choctaw Nation. Next slide. Our request for funding timeline. Our RFA opened on August 1st of 2019. We had our first webinar on August 13th. We have a webinar today, and we have one more on September 3rd. And if need be, we can have an additional webinar. And the RFA will close on Monday, September 30th, 2019 at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Next slide. Eligible grant recipients for this request for funding are outlined in our trust agreement under Section 8A. A brief description includes nonprofit organizations with IRS Section 501c3 tax exempt status, or if such status has not yet been achieved, such organizations may apply for funding through a fiscal sponsor that has received such 501c3 tax exempt status. Educational organizations described in Section 170B1A2 of the Internal Revenue Code, and community development financial institutions, CDFIs, including certified native CDFIs and emerging native CDFIs, provided that such CDFIs are tax-exempt organizations described in Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. Next slide. Eligible grant recipients continued. An instrumentality of a state or federally recognized tribe, including a nonprofit organization chartered under tribal law or state or federally recognized tribe. That furnishes assistance to designated or designed to further Native American farming and ranching activities, provided, however, that the use of any grant funds by such grant recipients shall be restricted exclusively to charitable and educational purposes. The grant recipient shall annually provide NAAF with audited financial statements and reports as required by NAAF. If the grant recipient is a governmental entity, it shall agree to a limited waiver of sovereign immunity with respect to NAAF's right to enforce the terms of the grant, i.e. the amount of funding awarded, and the grant recipient must agree to comply with expenditure responsibility requirements. More about the waiver of sovereign immunity is located in our Q&A. But the request for that document will not need to be turned in until an award has been made. So ultimately you have at least 60 days and upwards of 90 or more days to work with your tribe to obtain a waiver. And we do not have a standard or template waiver because every tribe is different. So we look to each tribe to create their own, and again, that will only be in the amount awarded. Next slide. Eligible grant recipients continued. Finally, a grant to a fiscal sponsors. You can use a fiscal sponsor. The trust may make grants to eligible grant recipients acting as a fiscal sponsor for organizations that would be eligible, but for the fact that the organization has not yet received a favorable 501c3 determination. Next slide. Again, eligibility. You will need verification of eligibility. That's a required, that can be in different forms depending on what type of entity or organization you are. And applicants must provide documentations to prove that they are eligible. Applicants must serve Native farmers and ranchers. And the term farmer and rancher should be interpreted in the broadest context possible and is meant to include farmers of all types of food and fiber product and ranchers of all types of livestock. Next slide. Now on to allowable use of funds. Applicants receiving funds will be required to use the funds to provide services to Native farmers and ranchers, including those seeking to become farmers and ranchers, and to support and promote their continued engagement in agriculture. The key areas that are allowed under the trust agreement are business assistance, agricultural education, technical support, and advocacy services. Next slide. More on allowable use of funds. The trust agreement controls the eligible uses and eligible entities for NAAF grant processes. So again, we urge everyone to read the trust agreement. The trust agreement prohibits grant funding for individual Native farmers and ranchers, but the trust may make grants to eligible recipients that make grants to individuals. So although NAAF is prohibited from making such grants to individuals, another organization, a successful grantee within this cycle of funding, can make grants to individuals. And for information on that, you can see section 90 of the trust agreement. Funds may be used for projects that are up to 24 months, 2 years in duration. They can end prior to 2 years, but they cannot be longer than 2 years. Funds may be used for projects to support scholarships, re-grants, loans, or capital expenditures. Funding for the programs that strictly meet the emphasis area within the 2019 RFA will be given the highest priority for funding in this application process. Again, we encourage you to read the full RFA for more information on those emphasis areas. Next slide. Now, non-eligible entities are projects. These are also outlined within the RFA, but there are various uses of the funds that we are distributing that cannot be spent in certain ways. Those non-eligible entities or projects include entities that do not provide business assistance, agricultural education, technical support, or advocacy services to Native farmers and ranchers. Work based outside of the United States, projects that do not provide assistance designed to further the success of Native farming and ranching or provide resources designed to further such success, and projects that seek funding predominantly to provide outreach on USDA programs and services. Our work and the funding that NAAF is going to provide to any country for Native farming and ranching is separate from the federal funding and the trust obligation of the United States government to any country. Therefore, we are not going to provide funding that will replicate those programs. You can use NAAF funding to leverage various USDA funds, but they cannot replicate. Next slide. Projects that assist individual native farmers and ranchers, but the services are not agricultural related. They must be agricultural related, and they must serve native farming and ranching. That is the basis for our existence. The use of funds that are not restricted exclusively to charitable and educational purposes described in IRS Section 170C 2B, and the use of funds for direct financial assistance to native farmers and ranchers, such as addressing natural disasters. Those funds are provided by USDA. Therefore, we will not be providing funding for addressing the natural disasters. Next slide. More on non-eligible entities and projects. Use of funds for litigation. You cannot use the funds for litigation, although advocacy funds can go to entities such as legal aid for Native American farming and ranching, for instance, to assist you with your business planning on your farm or probate, but they cannot be used to sue the federal government or USDA. Use of funds for direct lobbying or political activity as defined by the IRS, and that is efforts to influence legislation. However, other forms of advocacy may be allowed as far as educating or bringing awareness to issues that Native American farmers and ranchers face, but it can't cross the line into lobbying. Entities that are educational organizations but that do not have an established record of working with and by and through Native farmers and ranchers are not eligible for funding unless they partner with a Native controlled educational organization, and such Native controlled educational organization is the lead applicant on the project. Next slide. More on non-eligible entities and projects. Entities that have received fast track funding pursuant to a previous call for applications in 2016, which was subsequently funded in 2018, are ineligible for additional funding from NAAF for those same project activities under the fast track funding until the expiration of their fast track funding period in October of 2021. They may seek funding, however, for new projects or continuations of work funded earlier, but cannot receive funds for the same work previously funded through the fast track. As we explained in earlier slides, the fast track was the $38 million that was distributed when the final settlement was released, and the $38 million that went out, this section is addressing those fast track recipients. But again, you can apply for new projects or continuations of work. It just cannot be for the same work previously funded through October of 2021. When interpreting the scope of the RFA and in light of the language in the trust agreement, we are not allowed to consider applications by entities that are community-based organizations that do not squarely meet the definition of eligible entities in the RFA. These types of organizations can partner with eligible entities. Next slide. Access to credit. Access to credit was one of the base issues in the original Keep Siegel claim. Access to credit and credit servicing led us to this final settlement. Therefore, we have a special emphasis in addressing access to credit. Funding for programs that strictly meet the emphasis area for the 2019 RFA will be given the highest priority for funding in this application process. And since the central critical issue involved in Keep Siegel was credit, additional consideration will be given to those entities that have one of their specific targeted outcomes for the improvement of access to credit for Native American farmers and ranchers. Next slide. Combination projects. Applicants that combine focus areas, for example, projects combining business assistance with technical support or agricultural education with business assistance, will receive additional consideration over projects that are singular in focus. Value-added agriculture includes all types of processes by which value is added to raw ag products or raw hunted or gathered products, and NAAF will fund education and advocacy projects that ensure solid educational information is provided to those developing policies and to Native American farmers and ranchers. NAAF will not fund projects seeking to provide educational opportunities or degree programs for Native students that are not directly involved in or focus on agricultural sciences in the broadest context possible. Next slide. More on 2019 funding areas. NAAF has determined that there will be 4 primary priority areas and an additional 4 special emphasis areas for which funding will be provided during the 2019 funding cycle. Next slide. These priority funding areas are CDFIs, and within CDFIs, funding
Hello, everyone. Our apologies. It seems like we're having some technical difficulties. Please wait with us just a minute while we get Tony's audio back up. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. Moving on. Priority funding areas, CDFIs. Funding applications are sought from CDFIs, native CDFIs, meeting the definition of eligible entity that are currently providing agricultural lending to native farmers and ranchers. These entities are not required to provide any specific percentage of their available pool for lending to native farmers or ranchers, but should have demonstrated activity in this lending area. Next slide.
Hello.
Hello?
Thank you for writing to us. We know we're having some technical difficulties. Just one more moment while we try to get Tony's audio set up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Have we gone over the CDFI? Did you hear my CDFI section?
Let's start on CDFIs, please.
Okay. Priority funding areas under CDFIs include a pool of $2 million, and that will be made available to fund projects proposed by those eligible entities that can provide proof of a current agricultural lending portfolio or a demonstrated need through public input from their service areas, that such lending opportunities are needed by native farmers and ranchers they serve. There is no set limit on the amount of total available funding that they may seek, but additional consideration will be given to those applications who seek to serve the broadest number of potential native farmers and ranchers within the scope of their request. Next slide. Priority funding areas continued. Educational organizations. Funding applications are sought from educational organizations meeting the definition of eligible entity that currently provide and have in place advanced agricultural business classroom training, or who are ready to provide advanced agricultural business classroom training. The training shall be made available to Native students of the educational organization, can be provided as a certificate program or a degree-seeking program, and should cover such topics as agricultural economics, agricultural financing, agricultural marketing, hedging, futures trading, agricultural entity selection, risk management, food safety, agricultural law and policy, supply chain logistics in agriculture or related agricultural business areas. Next slide. Educational organization continued. This funding may only be used to support the provisions of such targeted training to Native farmers and ranchers. If the project includes a FERTEP faculty member, such faculty member must be in the lead on the application, and the project funds are to be used not for salary expenses, but for program expenses such as travel, assistance in the classroom, in the training setting, program participant expenses, and the like. Next slide. Educational organizations continue. Funding will not be provided to proposed projects in this category if those serving in the classroom or the certificate program, online or in person, are not a majority Native farmers and ranchers. A total of $2 million in funding is allocated for this target area of funding. There is no upper or lower limit to the amount of funds requested. Overhead limitations apply. Next slide. Moving on to 501c3 organizations. Funding applications are sought from nonprofit organizations meeting the definition of eligible entities within this request for application. These organizations may seek funding for any type of projects that is allowable under the framework of this request for applications. The nonprofit organization must provide proof that they currently serve Native farmers and ranchers. They are required to reflect the percentage of their larger portfolio of activities that are focused solely on the need of Native farmers and ranchers. Next slide. Additional 501c3 organizational information. The nonprofit organization may seek funding for enhancements of their own knowledge in the food and agricultural sector, to encourage their employees and staff to have a deeper understanding of the agricultural sector and needs of Native farmers and ranchers. However, the internal capacity development funds sought cannot be the majority of their proposed activities or budget for which funding is sought. There is a recognized need for all nonprofit organizations serving Native farmers and ranchers who are seeking success and sustainability in the agricultural sector to have greater knowledge of business assistance, education, lending, finance, technical, legal, risk, and related issues facing such farmers and ranchers. Continue. Next slide. There is an available pool of $2 million for projects in this category and no upper limit on the amount of funding sought for any particular project. Higher consideration will be paid to those entities that have a singular focus on the Native farmers and ranchers as their primary stakeholder, and those organizations that have experience in agriculture and are experiencing the needs of Native farmers and ranchers as demonstrated by an established history of serving this audience. If the applicant is a startup nonprofit organization, their fiscal sponsor is required to provide proof of service to Indian country and are the Native farming and ranching community. Next slide. Priority funding areas, tribes. Funding applications are sought from tribal governments or instrumentalities of tribal governments, as specifically described within the context of eligible entities as described within this request for applications. Funding applications are being sought for the narrow area of value-added agricultural enterprise development. Funding can be sought for feasibility studies, the securing or architectural, engineering, legal, or other technical advisors for future value-added agricultural enterprises, provided that those tribal governments seeking are shovel-ready or can exhibit that they are moving towards this direction as far as shovel-ready is concerned. And we are adding a section in our Q&A regarding the definition or our version of shovel-ready. So look to our Q&As as we update those on our website. Next slide. Additional information for tribes. Tribes must be prepared to move towards the next step in investing and creating value-added infrastructure that Native farmers and ranchers need in order to secure or maintain access to current or future markets, expand products available for the market, obtain the specialized technical support necessary in order to access or maintain presence in markets. Next slide. Value-added agriculture has unlimited possibility for growth for Native farmers and ranchers and tribal economic development activities. Because of this unlimited possibility for growth, NAAF is interested in targeting investments this funding cycle on ensuring that proper feasibility studies are done to support the ultimate success of project ideas. That proper analysis of technical, legal, and other significant components of proposed value-added projects are supported, and that the use of available funds be targeted on the ultimate success and stabilization of Native farmers and ranchers who use such Native-controlled infrastructure for product development and market access. Next slide. Priority funding areas tribes continue. There is an available $2 million limit for projects in this area. All projects should seek to limit their applications to no more than $75,000 in total budget funding sought. NAAF will entertain higher amounts in the request, but those entities that stay within the limit identified will receive higher consideration for funding. Next slide. Special emphasis funding. NAAF is also seeking applications in 4 key special emphasis areas. These areas have been determined as important or of high interest among survey respondents and are considered foundational concerns important to the underpinning of a strong and sustainable food system in Indian country. So again, we encourage you to participate in our survey, which we identified at the beginning of these slides. These special emphasis areas are traditional foods and food sovereignty programs, hemp production analysis, youth programming, the agricultural sciences, and NAAF will fund projects for no more than $75,000 per project in this area. And NAAF intends to provide a total of $500,000 in funding for these special emphasis areas. Next slide. More on traditional foods and food sovereignty in the special emphasis section. NAAF will provide funding for a small group of projects focused solely on the opportunities to establish a new focus area of an existing food sovereignty or traditional foods program, explore scaling up existing food sovereignty or traditional food programs to increase acreage under production involved within those programs, or to expand the scope of those scaling up activities already in place. Our secondary are follow-up activities to implement an existing food sovereignty assessment process. Next slide. Hemp production analysis. NAAF seeks proposals in a very narrowly focused area to explore the potential for industrial hemp production and value-added activities among tribal communities. While being prepared to engage in a new national production system for industrial hemp is important, NAAF firmly believes that to do so without proper analysis of the myriad of business, regulatory, and production issues is problematic to the success of those seeking to engage in this area. Next slide. more information on hemp production. Therefore, NAAF is seeking to fund a group of projects that can be focused on any of the following areas. Partial funding for project feasibility and market analysis studies for emerging industrial hemp crop production. Partial project feasibility and market analysis for emerging value-added hemp production manufacturing businesses. Analysis of transportation, testing, self-regulation, and tribal government regulatory needs in order to engage in the market. Our development of tribal plans authorized under the 2018 Farm Bill for regulation that will support tribal governance in the emerging industrial hemp industry. Next slide. Finally, NAAF will fund projects of no more than $50,000 to $75,000 per project. NAAF intends to provide a total of $500,000 in funding in this area, and NAAF will not entertain funding for CBD-related or analysis as the emerging medical and labeling regulatory issues facing CBD are complex, and the regulatory environment at this point in time is too premature and uncertain. Next slide. Youth programming within the special emphasis area. NAAF believes that the presence of Native youth in agriculture is important to the continued growth of Native food systems. To that end, they are seeking projects that focus on the intergenerational shift that is happening across Indian country. These projects can include hands-on production, support for 4-H, FFA, or other youth programs in the community or school, youth-led community projects, youth ag councils, travel scholarships for the Native youth so that Native youth can participate in agricultural training or leadership programs outside their community, or connect with other Native youth in agricultural programs. Next slide. NAAF is also interested in investing in programs that provide information and guidance to those Native youth who are interested in choosing food and agriculture, farming and ranching, or food system businesses as their career choice. NAAF is seeking to fund small projects in the range of $25,000 to allow a large number of projects to be funded, as large of a number of projects to be funded as possible. NAAF intends to provide a total of $500,000 in total funding in this area. Next slide. Agricultural sciences within the special emphasis area. NAAF is interested in providing funding through scholarships to attend existing agricultural science programs, regardless of the type of degree awarding institution, or regardless of whether the educational program is undergraduate, graduate professional, degree legal, veterinary, or other agricultural related professions or training in agricultural business related fields. The agricultural sciences include technical as well as the economics and business areas that are important to the future of Native American agriculture. Next slide. NAAF believes that development of a bench of agricultural related professionals is critical to continuing the growth of this sector within our communities. To that end, we are interested in applicants of at least two types. Programs that are broad scholarship programs for individual students that are focused on competitive annual scholarships/stipends to attend agricultural science programs regardless of location, or programs that are single or multiple institution-based agricultural science programs focused on recruitment and engagement of Native students for a specific degree program or a specific course of study. Next slide. NAAF is also interested in programs that specifically focus on the need to advance Native students from undergraduate programs into graduate or agricultural professional degree programs, or on programs that focus on national needs, such as veterinary programs or pre-veterinary programs. But projects across all technical and agricultural sciences are important, and such applicants are encouraged to apply. NAAF intends to provide a total of $500,000 in funding in this category. There's no upper budget request limit to any individual application received. Next slide. Points to consider in applications: the scope and nature of the service previously provided to Native farmers and ranchers, the scope and nature of the services you plan to provide to Native farmers and ranchers with award funds, how your request award amount fits within the overall budget for your organization, and how your work integrates community accountability and Native leadership. Next slide. Additional points to consider in applications: steps you will take to ensure the funds will be used for the purposes stated in the award proposal, whether your organization is based in a Native community that you are serving, and whether you are in service to Native farmers and ranchers in that community, or whether, and if your organization is not Native-led, if you have dedicated Native programming efforts, whether your organization has a strong set of leadership and broad members who are representative of the community and are accountable to the community that is being served. Next slide. Criteria for review: your proposed results, farmer and rancher demand, team organizational capacity and collaborators, impact on access to credit, potential results, innovation, wide application, and replicability. Next slide. Mandatory documents. Organizations that are tax exempt must include formal documentation of the entity's tax status or other basis for eligibility. An applicant will need to submit a mandatory copy of a resolution from its governing body, i.e. a board of directors, board of trustees, or a tribal council depending on the applicant type, and the resolution must state the description of the services the applicant will provide to Native American agricultural farmers and ranchers, a statement of the authority or approval of the applicant to apply for funding from NAAF for the purposes intended. Next slide. Use of funds. Should the applicant receive an award, it will be used solely for the purposes which meet the following three requirements. The purpose provided assistance designed to further Native American farming and ranching activities. B, the purpose is what was set forth in the application for funds. And C, the purpose is encompassed by section 170C2B of the Internal Revenue Code. Should the applicant receive an award, the funds will be used as funds for the purposes stated in the application. No existing funds will be diverted away from that program if the applicant funds are received. Next slide. Project budget tips. Reflect only funding requested for NAAF. Please use the required format for the project budget. Required formats are available for download from NAAF's website. And you will also, within the application, when you're online, if you are online applying, you will automatically see a link that will take you to our budget templates and guidance. If you are applying with a paper application, you can find those on our website at nativeamericanagriculturefund.org/grants. And all of our required formats are available. And other requirements, space and character limit, or size and character limit. These documents include the NAAF budget guideline, NAAF budget template, NAAF project budget sample, and NAAF budget narrative sample. Next slide. Include at the top of your budget your organization's name, project name, and the requested grant period in months. Separate columns are required for year 1 and year 2 if you are requesting funds for more than 1 year, and applicants are required to identify in the project budget narrative the project activities that will relate to various line items in the budget requested. Next slide. Before you make a PDF of the budget, don't forget to wrap the text so that all of your explanations in a single cell show up. Because this, when they say cell, they're talking about an Excel document that you have to convert to a PDF document, but you want to make sure that no information is cut off. Check your math in the Excel document before you convert it to a PDF document and submit it. And make sure all of your numbers in a column are visible and not cut off due to formatting. And if your budget runs into more than one page, include the column headings on the second page. Next slide. Project budget. The budget categories include personnel, include each person's title, annual salary, and the percentage of time spent indicating which proposed NAAF-funded activities will require what percentage of time, direct costs, meetings and travel, indicate the number of meetings or trips the proposed NAAF-funded activities supported by each trip, the specifics on how your numbers were calculated, include travel costs for one grantee meeting should your project be selected for funding. Supplies include specifics on costs and which proposed NAAF funding activities will be supported. Consultants indicate the number of hours, the hourly rate or stipend or honoraria, and which proposed NAAF funded activities will be supported. Printing, publications, be specific about the number and type of materials and which proposed NAAF funded activities will be supported. Next slide. Intermittent funds. Re-grants, loans, and scholarships. Be specific concerning the costs associated with the re-granting, lending, or scholarship activity. Indirect costs. All applicants will be limited to no more than 15% allowed indirect or administrative costs. And again, as we discussed, there is a survey on our website, and in this survey, questions or concerns regarding the 15% allowable indirect can be addressed there. So if we find that that amount isn't working for Indian country, it could potentially change in the next round. But this number was well researched in both the private and federal sector to try to make it the most amenable for Indian country applicants. Next slide. How to apply online. I'm now going to turn our presentation over to Marie Walk-On, who is going to explain how you apply through our online application process.
Okay. Hi, my name is Marie Walk-On, and I will be walking you through the how to apply online application. Okay, how to apply online. This presentation will teach you how to apply for the 2019 Native American Agricultural Fund NAAF request for applications. All applicants will be directed to the NAAF grant page where they can review important documents. They can also click on the Start Application yellow button, which will direct them to the Log-On application page. Next page. The first step to start the application process is to log on to the NAAF, sorry guys. Okay, the first step to start the application process is to log on to the NAAF's grants page on the Native American Agricultural Fund main web page. Application instructions. In order to access the online application system and apply, you first must register in the system system by clicking the Create New Account button on the Log On page. Please note that the applicants are the only users that complete the registration process. Please note that duplicate applications from the same organization will be flagged. Also, please note that the email you use when creating an account will become your user name. Next page. Creating a new account is a multi-step process. The first section collects the organization's information. Once all required fields are entered, selecting Next will bring you to the next section. Then you will complete the user information section, meant to capture the applicant's information or the information of the person completing the registration process. If the applicant's mailing address is the same as the organization's, just click on the copy address from organization and all the information will automatically be transferred to the address fields. Next page. New account continued. The email address entered in the email-user name field becomes your username in the system. For this reason, an email address may only be registered into the system once, as the email address is the applicant's unique identifier. After you fill out the first section, you will be asked to continue to fill out executive officer information as well as the organization information. Executive officer information. First, you must indicate if you are the organization's executive officer or enter the information on behalf of the executive officer. Some applicants will enter an executive officer as the main point of contact. Therefore, these staff members should not use their own email, as email becomes usernames. Instead, they should use the email of the person who will access the site and become the main point of contact. Next page. Additional information, account information found on the Log On page. There is the user information, executive officer question, additional executive officer information, and password. Once you have completed all of those sections, you will see a submit button on the bottom of the right of the page. Click this button and it will ask you to confirm your email. Next page. Create account, new account created. Upon clicking create account, an automatic email is sent to you, directed to the email you entered in the your information email login field. This automatic email is a system default email and cannot be changed. You will land on the confirmation page where you are asked to confirm that you received the automatic confirmation email. The confirmation email can be resent if necessary to ensure systems emails are being received. If you have issues with your email, you can email grants@nativeamericanagriculturalfund.org and we will work to resolve your Log-On issues. Next page. Once you have created your account, you can then enter through the Log-On page. Once you have logged on, you will see the following page. There is that, as you can see the red arrow pointing, that's where you want to apply. Click that and the application will pop up. Next page. Creating a new account is a multi-step process. Once you start your application, you will have a series of questions and fill in the blank sections as well as uploaded document questions. Depending on what type of funding and how many projects you are applying for, you will have access to all or some of the questions. If you check the box No on a section, you will not see the questions associated with the area of funding. For example, if you apply for targeted funding only, you will not see the questions for any special emphasis area funding. Applications automatically save. Next page. Uploading documents. You can only upload PDF documents. You will be asked to save project budget templates for each project or area of funding you are applying for. These links can be found within the application. Click them, download them, fill them out, and then upload them back into the application in PDF form. Next page. Completed application. Once you have completed your application and pushed the submit button, you will be taken back to your dashboard. In the future, this is where you will see application status updates and
Hello all. Once again, a few technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience, and we'll be back on here shortly.
finally your
Start. Start. Peter just changing.
Okay, so we were here at the end of the technical aspect, and if you have any questions beyond what you see on the screen, please do write in our question box on the GoToWebinar control panel, or reach out to us through our grants email, grants@nativeamericanagriculturefund.org, and we'd be happy to walk you through the FONDOT system. At this time, we'd like to transition to our Q&A. We have now our CEO, Janie Hip, here with us. The way it will work is I will read out the question that you sent in our question box, and Janie will address it on air. We will keep accepting questions throughout this time. So please, if something sparks in your mind, go to the question box and send it to us. Without further delay, I will start with the first question. Regarding overhead/administrative expenses, can this include partial salary for a project director?
Normally, this is Janie, and thanks for inviting me. I'm glad everybody on the staff pushed everybody through the many slides we had in front of us. And you should have on your screen now, before I answer that question, Carly, I want to thank Tony and Marie for walking through the whole system as it stands right now. If y'all have any questions about the FONDOT system or you get confused while you're in it, just email us, pick up the phone and call us, and we will do our best to provide technical support to you throughout that process. Before I get to that question, Carly, I do want to remind everybody about the open date. The open date was August 1st. The close date is September 30th at 11:59 Central PM time. And so please be mindful and mark it on your calendars. The other thing I wanted to share with you is, just as a reminder, that the main web page where you can access all the essential documents, including the request for applications and the Q&A, which, oh, by the way, we will be updating after today's webinar, and then we'll do potentially another update of the Q&A, the frequently asked questions on our website. We had about 60 questions on the last webinar, and so we have gone through and we're updating our frequently asked questions as we speak. We'll post those by the end of this week. If we get any new questions after today or after the last webinar, then we'll be sure and update the FAQs on that as well. And then you can email us at grants@nativeamericanagriculturefund.org. I think then for phone assistance, please be mindful that our phone number is 475-6226. We have someone on the phone line all day, all work day hours, Monday through Friday. But you can leave a message at any other times, and we have a commitment internally to get back to you between 24 and 48 hours. And then when you're using the system, particularly if you're going to be doing paper applications, be sure and take a look at our address. It's on our website, but it's also on these slides as well. There it is in the bottom of your slide. So just be sure and write it down, and we will need to have any paper applications that are submitted have to be postmarked and date stamped and time stamped if possible by that cutoff date, because that will we will need to have them submitted into the mailing system or delivery system by that cutoff date. So with that, I'm going to turn to that first question, Carly. And the first question, I think you've got to be very specific when you're actually doing your budget for your particular project. The budget for any staff should be included. The 15% would be in addition to any staff that you would actually identify as a line item in your budget. So the 15% is not inclusive of your project staff. You should indicate in your personnel budget what their, as we indicated in the slides, what their salaries are and what percentage of salary. And you can cover that in your narrative as well. But that's the answer, I think, to your first question, Carly. And so what's the second?
Since the settlement came against the USDA, are NAAF funds considered federal funds?
No, they left the federal designation back in 2011 when the settlement agreement was actually approved by the court. So right after the settlement agreement was approved by the district court several years ago, the funds left federal designation. One of the questions we actually had, and I may be putting words in the speaker's mouth or the questioner's mouth, but one of the questions we had on the webinar last time was whether you can use these funds if you receive an application and you're funded as match. And because they're not federal funds, you can use them as match. But there may be a related question. I may have jumped the gun a little bit in asking it, but I thought I would make a point of that at that question. But they are not federal funds.
Page 18 of the RFA states 20% of score for farmer rancher demand. What evidence are you looking for to demonstrate that the demand for the proposed activities exists?
That really should be up to you all to prove up. Let me give you an example. If your organization has, let's say you're a CDFI and you intend to apply, and you have farmers and ranchers coming in for loans in a greater amount that you can actually allocate within your lending budget. That's a very simple letter to us that as of X date, you have a demand that exceeds your supply funds. The same could hold true for a nonprofit organization. If you regularly are out amongst native farmers and ranchers and you start to see that there is a growing need for XYZ kind of technical support, just write a letter to us and include it and notate it in your narrative that you have been asked these sorts of questions for services that you don't have the funding to do. And so it can be very simple, or it can be a survey that you've done and the need arises and is demonstrated in a survey that you've done of your particular farmers and ranchers that you work with. There's all sorts of ways to actually prove that up. It depends on basically who you are and what you're out there doing. But if you need some other ideas about how to prove that up, just send us an email. We're glad to walk you through that sort of technical question. But we're looking for simple statements, simple narratives that would prove that you're out working among native farmers and ranchers, and there's been a call for this kind of work among the people you serve.
Does the 501c3 requirement mean that 7871 tribal governments are not eligible without a sponsor?
It does not. It's very specific in the trust agreement 501c3s are the only entities that are identified in the trust agreement itself. If you have a 7871 organization that can arguably meet those requirements, we need for you to actually identify as such in a letter that is included. In addition, you may actually be able to come under the instrumentality of a tribal government requirement. So it very much depends on the type of organization and entity that you are seeking to put forward. But 7871 organizations were very specifically allowed in the previous fast track funds, but there was a different settlement agreement that was finalized, and we are functioning under the specific language of this settlement agreement.
Is nutrition education included under agricultural education?
Sadly, it is not. There are a lot of other resources that are out there for nutrition education. But if you're only doing nutrition education, for instance, around diabetes, for instance, then you would have to be able to show that you are directly meeting the needs of Native farmers and ranchers. So while it does involve food and making sure people eat healthy, the real thrust of the Native American Agriculture Fund and the case itself was to meet the needs of Native farmers and ranchers.
Is providing information to tribes considered a service and therefore an eligible use of grant funds?
First of all, it depends on what kind of information you're providing. I would be interested in actually knowing what it is you're trying to provide. Sometimes folks think that, and we were very specific about it in the actual request for applications, these funds are not intended to supplant or take the place of USDA information, that it has a separate responsibility to get out to tribes to share and to individual Native producers. So to the extent, for instance, Carly, that you would be putting forward information provided to tribes that is of the nature of USDA sorts of activities, then that is not covered here. So it very much depends on what sort of information you're talking about. You're going to have to make the case that it drives into the space of business assistance, technical support, agricultural education, or advocacy that would benefit Native farmers and ranchers.
Can grants be made directly to a federally recognized tribe that owns a farm and employs tribal members who produce and harvest the farm?
That's a very, very broad question, but there's nothing that would prohibit a tribal government through its instrumentality of its farm to actually apply for funds. But the question is, what exactly are you doing? Are you doing a specific project in relation to that farm? And how does that farm actually assist individual Native farmers and ranchers?
My organization, a 501c3, trains veterans and civilians for various agricultural jobs. We do not discriminate, but I am not sure yet if we have ever served any Native Americans. If we have not, but wish to reach out to them and serve them, are we eligible to apply?
You would need to identify how you have identified the need among Native farmers and ranchers for your services. There are a lot of Native farmer rancher veterans that are out there. I know many folks who fall into the veteran category myself. So I think you're going to have to be more specific about what it is you're actually trying to do and where you're going to be serving and how are you going to identify Native farmers and ranchers who are among the farmer rancher veteran group.
Are there working definitions for business assistance, agricultural education, technical support, and advocacy services?
I knew this question was going to come, and the answer is those terms are extremely broad on their own. Business assistance, for instance, can be anything from helping folks do a business plan to helping them understand how to apply for crop insurance and what it means for their business operation. Technical support, there's so many examples of technical support. Some of it can be around food safety and understanding very technical aspects of food safety, certification requirements. So I know it's going to sound like I'm not giving you an answer, but put your thinking caps on, because business assistance, technical support, agricultural education, and advocacy in the native farmer and rancher context is very, very broad. So we just need for you to be very specific about what it is you're trying to do. What knowledge are you trying to impart, or how are you trying to assist native farmers and ranchers, for instance, on business assistance? Are you actually helping them identify new ways to calibrate their business plans, their marketing plans? So I know I'm pushing back a little bit on that question, but it is broad. And so there's a laundry list of potential things that you could do in each one of those categories, quite frankly.
Is training for Native American students in commodities trading considered agricultural education?
I think it would be. Absolutely. Agriculture is broad and varied. And I just left a meeting and one of the folks there said it, and it's complicated. And so, yes, aspects of it can be complicated. So yes, commodities trading is a big issue for certain components of the sector. We inhabit, as Native people, every potential nook and cranny of agriculture writ large. So commodity trading could be a part of that, yes.
Our area is experiencing a severe shortage of meat cutters. Even the large food liners are unable to provide custom cuts in our local stores. The tribe also has a bison herd and cattle operation that makes it necessary for Native farmers and ranchers to get their meat processed locally for sale or personal use. It is our goal to provide scholarships to tribal members to obtain certification in meat cutting to be earned from a recognized meat cutting and processing institute. We hope to provide more employment opportunities for tribal members that are interested in getting a certification, and we are confident that they will be able to find gainful employment, and this value-added project will greatly bolster the sale of meat produced by independent Native American farmers and ranchers, as well as tribal meat operations. My question is, would this be a viable project under the program?
Absolutely. Short answer to a very long question, but it sounds like you've already started thinking through how you're going to meet the needs of Native farmers and ranchers in your area, and we would welcome your application to come in the door.
We are looking for a 501c3 fiscal sponsor, and I'm wondering if that 501c3 needs a history of working with Native Americans or Native American farmers.
Yes, they do.
Many of these qualifications are subjective. How do we justify and communicate in real terms we qualify, since there seems to be a curve of interpretation?
Please be very specific when you're talking about your actual project and in your narrative and in your budget narrative. The more details you can give us, the better. Because the terms of the trust agreement, particularly in the previous question, was what does business assistance mean? It can mean a lot of things. So it's really important for your narrative to not assume that we know what you mean. Be specific and be as descriptive as you can possibly be.
Does value added for tribes include hemp and marijuana growing, processing to market?
There is actually, in the special emphasis area, a very narrow area that we're willing to fund in the hemp production analysis arena. But if you're asking me whether these funds can be used for actual production costs, no, and not at this time.
In regards to special emphasis funding, if these are special interest areas, why is there a low cap on funding?
The special emphasis area was designated because we started to see quite a few questions on our survey, and when we were out and about and talking with different producers around these topic areas. And so they are basically a testing of the water, if you will, of just to see how much true applications we would actually get in these spaces. So special emphasis is meant to acknowledge that these seem to be very important topic areas for a wide group of tribes and native producers around the country based on what we're hearing through our survey, but we shall see. It was very difficult for us to identify that those topic areas would override anything that was just of a general nature. So that's why we set up the request for applications the way we did. The targeted is literally topic area, not specific, other than to comply with how it's written up. And then the special emphasis is to drive into those spaces where we believe that there will be higher incidents, but we're not sure yet. We shall see.
Can you write one proposal for more than one program area?
Yes.
Our 501c3 offers college accredited agricultural training programs. Do either or both of the colleges that we partner with need to have a history of serving Native farmers and ranchers? If so, how do we find a tribal college or university to partner with?
Actually, there's a website available that either the American Indian Higher Education website or the American Indian College Fund can really, there's a map, I think, on both of those websites that has all of the tribal colleges listed. So I don't know where you are, so that's the first place I would go. It's important that educational institutions that you partner with be dedicated to serving Native farmers and ranchers, at least in your new application. If you are the one bringing the experience and the contacts into the application itself, then you would need to be a prevalent player in the application. But keep in mind too that educational institutions, you've not been specific about what exactly they are, but you need to check in the Internal Revenue Code citation that we listed in the RFA itself, so that you can double check to make sure that your educational institution partner actually meets the Internal Revenue Code description of what is an educational institution.
Must nonprofits already be serving Native ranchers and farmers and have a track record of doing so?
No, but you should reflect that there's a demand and a need and that you are prepared to serve that need specifically. But there was, for those of you who may have participated in the fast track application process, there actually was a requirement that the entity had to be in existence for actually in a very specific time frame, which booted a lot of absolutely new 501c3s out of the picture. It was just the way that the settlement was actually constructed at that time. What happened when the final settlement was approved is it allowed for newer organizations to emerge and be supported through the NAAF funding mechanisms. All we need for you to tell us is how you're set up and how you propose to meet the need, and have you identified the need. Chances are, if you are a new 501c3, because it does take a period of time for IRS to actually get back to you with your certification. Sometimes that can take anywhere from 6 months to over a year. So if you fall into that new category, just be mindful that we need proof of your 501c3 determination. It needs to come in the application process. And if you don't have it yet, then you need to partner with an entity that does. So just be mindful that what we are looking for is the specific IRS determination letter.
So we have to apply for funding by priority area. What do we do if our project will lead into different program areas and priority, but will be linked together?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I think I probably need more information, but I'm going to take a stab at it anyway. If I understand the question properly, I think what you need to do is to be as descriptive about what you're trying to get funding for, the specific project, but where you think it will lead. I hope I'm getting to the point of your question, but people who do work that's funded project by project have a tendency to find new things, and their project, although it may be designed to do XYZ, ends up pointing them in a new direction, and they get prepared to actually then apply for future funding to meet this new need. So we're cognizant that things change, but I do think, at least if I understand your question correctly, just be descriptive. Describe what you're exactly trying to do and where you think it will lead.
Are there any restrictions on the type of PDF uploaded, such as read-only or the file size? I think in response to that question, I would encourage you to upload the PDF as you have it. If you run into issues with that, please contact us and we'll walk you through it.
I think technically that's the correct answer, Carly. Thanks.
If a single application includes a mix of funds requested, it sounds like each one will have its own narrative and budget. Is there a summary budget or overall summary narrative required or suggested?
No. Just be clear.
We have a sugar shack that makes harvest sap and makes maple syrup. We're planning on increasing tree taps to produce more. We'd like to develop an e-commerce website to promote marketing and increase sales of our syrup. Is this something that is eligible?
You'd have to make the case that it's a part of technical support, business assistance, agricultural education. Obviously, it's a value-added component. But yeah, make the case that it fits within those other definition areas.
How much is set aside for this first grant round in 2019? Will there be another grant round in 2020 and expected at the same time of year?
The RFA is very specific about exactly what we're looking at for 2019, what we hope to do. But the trustees, the people sitting on this phone call and this office and myself are not the final decision makers. The trustees themselves are. So I think it's really important that if you all would like to see this as an annual occurrence, then let us know. Either send us an email or make sure you fill out the survey. But we are hopeful that this occur on an annual basis, but it's not our decision to make. The trustees make that decision.
Are wages or partial wages for those involved in the project considered admin expense or project expense?
I think we've already answered that, the first question. They're not considered indirect.
Could NAAF funds be used to start a Native American scholarship endowment that will provide scholarships for Native American agricultural students for years to come? Or do all the funds need to be expended within the 24-month window?
We're looking this go around, we're looking at moving funds through whatever your projects are so that they are expended within this 1 or 2 year window, whatever your window is. Endowments really tend to denote that you gather funds up and they sit for a while. What we're interested in doing is making sure that if you do scholarships, that they don't sit, that they are assigned and move out the door to scholarship recipients. Same with loans. If we do a grant to a CDFI to do a relending or a loan portfolio, we want those funds to move through that process and get out into the hands of either education scholarship recipients or farmers and ranchers through loan. I hope that gives an example of what we're talking about, but we specifically wanted to get the funds moving through the entities into what Native farmers and ranchers need.
It's my understanding that NAAF grant funds can be used for project staff. Can they be used for faculty?
I'm not sure how you would use funds for faculty unless they're actually doing something in the project. And I'm assuming that they would be doing something in the project. I'm not sure it matters whether they're program staff or faculty at that point, but if they're just sitting there not doing anything in the project, then I think you're going to have to make a case that they have a role in the project.
Can you please explain why, if we are awarded funds, why would we be required to provide NAAF a limited waiver of sovereign immunity?
Because that is very specifically written into the trust agreement itself. It is one of those items that is a shall, and we have absolutely no ability to waive that whatsoever. It is written in the trust agreement. And I think if you pull up the trust agreement, it's on our website. And if you actually look through the agreement, you'll see that as to tribal governments, we are required to obtain that from you as a limited waiver, limited to the amount of the grant. We don't have the flexibility to not do it.
Does the institution, i.e. the sponsored projects office for a higher education institution, register, or is the individual PI supposed to register?
You know, that is such a difficult question to answer, because some institutions allow the PI, the actual lead person on the project, to register, and some institutions require that their major research office or sponsored programs office register. There is no way for us to know everybody's policy. You're going to have to actually follow your own policy.
Are Certified Local Governments Act, LGA, Navajo chapters eligible to apply?
If they're considered instrumentalities of a federally recognized government. I think I would drive you back towards the trust agreement and what that specifically says.
How many applications can a tribe submit?
There is no upper limit. They need to be for discrete individual projects, clearly.
Is aquaculture eligible?
Actually, yes.
Can a tribal enterprise such as Navajo Agricultural Product Industry, NAAP, apply independently from the tribe for hemp production analysis, or would the Navajo tribal government have to apply on their behalf?
I think that is between NAAP and the Navajo tribal government. We really, if NAAP is considered an instrumentality of the Navajo government, then I would think that either could apply for the project you're trying to do, but that really is between NAAP and the Navajo government.
Would it be allowable to use funds to assist Native disabled farmers acquiring assistive technology / equipment to aid them in starting and operating their farm operation?
I don't see why that wouldn't be a valid technical support type of project, or it could be business assistance for that matter.
How about a high tunnel for a school program?
It probably falls into the category of that would be covered. The question really here is who are you serving? Are you actually serving Native farmers and ranchers with that, or are you serving the school district? I think you've got to be very specific when you actually lay that kind of project description out.
We have an existing farmer training program on a reservation-owned farm. This program is funded for 2 years. Could your funds be used to extend this program?
I don't see why not.
Is the $75,000 limit applicable if you seek to develop projects in 2 different areas?
It's the project, the $75,000 limit is per project.
Our 501c3 has extensive experience working with tribes in many capacities, forestry and food systems, including working with tribes on their own food sovereignty initiatives, and are just beginning to work with individual tribal farmers and ranchers. Would we be eligible to build off our existing program to meet the unique needs of individual tribal members, since we are at the beginning stages of working with tribal members?
I don't see why you wouldn't. Just be descriptive, identify your audience and talk about your relationship with your audience. Everyone should do that.
Can our project combine multiple special emphasis projects with a value-added project for a total budget over $75,000, or is the application limited to one project area / category?
You've got to, I think I answered previously that each discrete project has that limit. But if you choose to combine, you've got to keep the budgets separate, because you're actually asking for budgets that would be discrete as to particular components of an overall effort. So just be specific. Drive your budget and budget narrative into the actual project that you want it to fund. And if you choose to combine them, just be very specific about what your intention for us is to see when we're reviewing the application. The least confusion you can give the reviewers in the process, the better.
We're considering applying for funds for a 400,000 acre Arapahoe Ranch owned and operated by the tribe since 1940. Is that okay?
I don't have enough information to actually know exactly what you're trying to do. So I would encourage you to get more specific.
Can we use a fiscal sponsor that works with Native Americans, but not specifically with Native farmers?
Obviously that's your choice. I would think that working with a fiscal sponsor that has experience in working with Native folks on any issue is going to be better than working with one with no experience. So just make the case.
So studies on hemp production qualify as long as there's no CBD. Can we apply for a loan for a hemp project not related to CBD?
First of all, we do not do loans. The NAAF is prohibited by the trust agreement from doing any direct loans. The only loan activities we can fund are through CDFIs, and the CDFIs apply to us for a grant, and then they turn around and use the grant funds we provide as a lending pool, basically. So we don't do direct loans whatsoever. We're prohibited.
I thought I read $2 million in total will be available in this funding cycle. If that's true, why having the national interest?
Again, I went over our decision-making process around special emphasis. It literally was to get our toe in the water around some topic areas that seem to be of high interest. I think it's really important for people who apply this time, don't let that amount keep you from applying. Apply. We are putting out this application process to get folks in the system. And so, this is what the trustees have decided to do for this go around. But they may see that the application pool is much bigger and may want to actually do another application very quickly. It's hard to say. We need to hear from you. This is the first time we're doing this. So just be mindful that we may be flooded with applications, in which case the trustees will hear about that first and foremost. So just be aware that we had to get started. But let us know through the survey mechanism and your emails that we need more.
When will the funding be available?
We're going to get the applications vetted. The trustees are going to make their final decisions as soon as possible. What we're hoping to do is do that by the end of the year so that we can get all of the selected applicants' contracts working on those so that we can get the money out the door. I think realistically, we're looking at very early in 2020, the funds will flow. But if we can get it moving quicker than that and the selected applicants and our team can get the contracts in place quickly, then we'll hopefully move it out the door quicker. So we're just going to work as hard as we can to get the funds flowing as quickly as possible.
Do all value-added components have to be submitted through tribal governments? We would like to work through a different 501c3.
Value added is one of those things that it has a business assistance aspect to it. It has a technical support aspect to it. It even has an agricultural education component to it. So it is so optional, up to you about whether you want to go forward in a value added piece in the special emphasis arena through a tribal government, or whether you actually want to work through a targeted application through a 501c3, but really hone in on value added. Value added is one of those areas that's so critical, I think, to really the furtherance of the entire field of native agriculture. And it is, we talk about it in the request for application as being fairly unlimited. It's only limited by our creativity. The reality is, though, that we need for you to make that decision. But there are components of value-added work that can sit in each one of these categories. So just be creative and think strategically about how you want to present your application, but it doesn't necessarily have to go through a tribal government now.
So if I understand correctly, we could submit one joint overall multiple projects narrative, but each would ask for a separate budget.
Yes.
At this time, I encourage you to submit your question if you have one. We're still here and would like to answer those for you. So go to your GoToWebinar control panel, find the section that says questions and type us up one. While we're waiting to see if anyone else has a question, I'll remind you that this recording will be available online starting tomorrow on our website. If you go to nativeamericanagriculturefund.org/grants-webinar, you'll find the page with all of the registrations along with the recordings from last week and today. You'll also see the PowerPoint available for you to download and view. We have one final webinar coming up on Tuesday, September 3rd, and you're free to register for that as you wish. You'll see the link to it in the shared screen now.
So Carly, I wanted to also mention, this is Janie, y'all. Get registered in the Founded system if you intend to do online application. Go ahead and get that started. I would really encourage folks to not wait until the last minute to apply. The Founded system can handle any number of applicants. That's not the problem. It just is a great thing to do is to back yourself up several days prior to the deadline and actually try to get it done then so that it's not lurking in your to-do list. But we'll keep it open until our official deadline. I always encourage folks who apply for any grants to don't wait till the last minute.
So we had a few more questions come through. Can you explain the selection review process?
The selection, if you actually look back in the slide deck, it talks about points of evaluation. Those are the points that we're going to be looking at when we actually review each one of the applications. Each application will be reviewed to make sure it's eligible entity first and foremost. We're going to look to see whether all of the required documents are in place. That's an important next step. But then we will do a thorough review of each application that comes in, whether it comes in via online or by paper. And we will use the evaluation criteria that are in the request for applications process. And once we go through that entire review process, then the trustees will make the final decision.
If we have a FRTEP grant, can a portion of the budget go towards salary if that employee is not paid under the FRTEP grant?
If I understand your question correctly, it is likely that you could, but that really requires somebody to do a good budget analysis of exactly how your FRTEP people are being funded. So I may not have enough information, just need to be mindful of the requirements that are applied to FRTEP. We mentioned it specifically because it is a unique situation. But just if you got technical questions, then just give us a holler. But sometimes those FRTEP agents are funded by different mechanisms at different institutions. So it's really difficult to make a one-size-fits-all decision or comment. Just let us know if you got any technical questions that come up when you're applying that your institution can't answer.
If a tribe wants to set up a CDFI, can NAAF funds be used? Does the CDFI need to be restricted to ag-related loans?
CDFIs can fund any number of things. I think the current native CDFIs that are out there fund a wide variety. There's, I think, a couple of the native CDFIs that are really starting to hone in and specialize just in agriculture issues. That question, honestly, on CDFI formation, I'm going to actually punt you over to OESTA. And if you give them a holler, OWEESTA.org, give them a holler, they could walk you through the creation process and the certification of native CDFI process much better than I. That is their expertise.
Can you talk about how a successful applicant can leverage their funds with federal funds?
Well, there are a wide variety of fund mechanisms that are out there at the federal level. Those can be available not just in USDA and all of its various funding authorities, but also over at ANA and at BIA. I mean, there's mechanisms for a wide variety of federal funds. You're not going to be restricted in terms of, like, for instance, if you were a successful applicant here and we funded your project, these are not considered federal funds. So you would have a lot of flexibility to then turn around and apply to USDA and not have those count as federal funds in your application process. So that's something to think about. But there's all sorts of federal assistance resources that can help you kind of uncover various avenues for funding for food and agriculture. But there's also re-granting programs that are out there that specialize in the area of native food and agriculture. And there's a number of foundations that fund in this space, both small or larger resources. And so do we have enough funding in this space? No, absolutely not. Do we have enough funding in native food and agriculture specialized just to our needs? Of course not. But leveraging across federal resources as well as any sort of private foundation or other 501c3 resources, we encourage you to do that every single day, because funding food and ag projects is not a simple mechanism, but there are multiple types of resources out there. In the coming months and years, we will be more active in helping folks identify the wide array of leveraging possibilities, but we felt it most important right now to get rolling on this first request for applications itself, and these other things will come. But in the meantime, take a look at the resources that are out there that are funded through the fast track recipients, as well as just give us a call. We will direct you to the resources that we're aware of as well.
Related to a previous question and answer, can you provide a definition of supplanting?
Taking the place of.
To be clear, what is the total amount that will be awarded for 2019?
We have identified it in the request for applications, but again, it's possible that it could be more. I mean, if we have a whole lot of applications coming in, it is possible that we decide to put more out there. But what we did was start this year.
How will you select the reviewers?
The reviewers are being selected based on their expertise in food and agriculture and Indian country native producers. Really important to have anyone who ever reviews an application needs to know their audience.
Thank you everyone for submitting your questions. Real quick, if you have one last one, please do submit that. Again, I'd like to tell you that this recording will be available starting tomorrow on our website, NativeAmericanAgricultureFund.org/grants-webinar. There you'll also find the link to sign up for the September 3rd webinar, and you'll see the full PowerPoint that was used. You can always reach us either through our phone number 479-445-6226 or through our dedicated email line for grants questions, grants@nativeamericanagriculturefund.org.
And please let us know if you have more questions. Just send them in through our email or just give us a call at any time. Those can be technical questions about the RFA, or they can be technical questions you have about the Foundant online system. So don't hesitate. We're here to answer any questions that you might throw at us. And good luck. And I would say time to start thinking about what you want your application to entail. And thanks so much, Tony and Marie, for walking us through the slides today. And Carly, thank you for keeping us on track and making sure that the questions get posed and we can walk through those as well. So be looking for our updated frequently asked questions on our website. We're going to add new questions and answers to that and get it posted this week. Thanks, everybody.